Can everybody hear me now? You can hear me? Okay. Can somebody talk so I can hear you?
Caitlin, can you hear us?
Me too.
Yeah. Aaron
Nice.
and Kevin, some BHD CJS friends. Good to see you as well.
See you.
Hi, Ryan. Good to see you.
Ciao. Yep. Excited for this.
Everybody's day going so far. Not too bad. Happy Friday. Happy Friday. I spent my early morning at the vet with my 6-month-old puppy, so that's always fun. It makes me realize that I cannot afford children, so I can barely afford a puppy.
Yes. Just vaccines or
No, he had his foot really bad. I think it was Tuesday. He was outside playing in our backyard, and apparently we have some we bought an older house, and the lady who lived here before, love her heart, had dementia, and she was just planting everything. So there's so much overgrowth that we're like trying to cut down, but there was a piece of metal landscaping that
Hmm.
he like sliced his foot on, so we had to go get stitches
Oh
and
no.
keep him sedentary. So trying to keep a 6-month-old puppy from running has been just a nightmare.
Oh my gosh. No kidding.
Let's see here. Can everybody hear me okay? It says it might be a little muted, it sounds like.
So you're definitely quiet.
Okay. I'm not sure what's going on with my audio today. Let me see here. Okay. Nope. Let's see here. Is that better at all? Or is that worse? About the same? Now I don't even know if I can hear you guys. Hold on 1 second. All right. I'm not sure what's happening here. Oh, how's that? Is that a little better?
Yep.
Okay,
Definitely.
perfect. There we go. We're figuring it out. It's Friday, you know. Well, it seems. Good morning, Jen. Good to see you.
Good morning.
Okay. Thanks for letting us know, Michelle. Thanks for joining us, even though. Oh, now I'm too loud. Hold
Maybe
on a
not too
second. Let
loud,
me.
but it was a stark difference from before.
How's that? Is a little.
Yeah, I think that's about right.
Okay, perfect. All right. Well, since the first half of the morning has been technical difficulties, I guess we can go ahead and just get started. So I will share my screen over here. Give me 1 second. Let me pull that up. And I'll go ahead and zoom in here. All right. Can everybody see this okay? Perfect. All right. Well, with that, we'll pass it over to Jen to go ahead and get us started.
Good morning, everybody. Happy Friday. Let's see. Do we have a quorum? I see myself, Michelle, Dr. Rice. Who else? I might not be seeing the whole list. Is there any other board members besides us three
I'm here.
and Jess?
Yes, I know that Katie is not going to be able to join today. She is starting a new job and doing some training there. And then I believe uh, Kathy was going to be a little bit late today.
Do we need to wait for Cassie to have a quorum?
It looks like even with Kathy, we probably will not have a quorum today.
Okay.
Yes.
Um,
So let me just
well,
go
I
ahead
guess.
and go through roll call really fast just to make sure that we're not missing anybody. So we have Dr. Karen Rice here. Thank you. Jennifer, Michelle, Jessica. Okay, Kat. We don't have Kat on today. James. Don't have James on. Scott. No Scott today. Katie is out. Hal. No, we don't have Hal on. Okay. Casey Wolfington. All right. Cassie. Gonna be late. And then Renee. right.
Renee is no longer with CDHS, so her position, that's actually something I wanted to talk about at some point today.
Yes. Absolutely. We can definitely talk about that today and start looking for a replacement. All right. All right, everybody. Let's keep going on then.
All right, so I guess we can take a look at the agenda. We just won't be able to vote on approval. You want to pull up the minutes from November?
Sure. Also going to just drop this link into the chat. It is hyperlinked into the agenda, so you all have that.
Sorry, I did not pay attention to that.
Not a problem. All right, let me see here.
Did we get any additional applications for the subcommittee?
Yes, but it was Renee, so we're going to be we're going to be needing to get another one. Yes, we will need to get a couple, like maybe 1 to 2 more people, if that would be possible. I know that sorry, I'm trying to multitask here. I know that we're really trying to do our letters of recommendation. So, and I think that this is a wonderful running list that we have, especially as we start meeting with Aaron and Kevin this morning. We'll start seeing kind of how some of their work that they're doing within their committee is overlapping with our committee. And so we can start, doing some cross collaboration work there, which would be absolutely wonderful. So going back to our agenda, I know that we don't have a quorum, so we're not able to vote on the November minutes, but we can always come back to that at next month when we do hopefully have our quorum again.
All right. And since we're kind of skipping that, I'll just insert. So Dr. Renee Marquardt is no longer with the Department of Human Services. So I met with Perry May, who oversees the 24/7 facilities for CDHS, and just kind of explained what the advisory board was, and strongly recommended, because I guess it's going to be his duty, or he would like to find somebody to replace her from CDHS. So I explained what it is and asked that whoever it is be familiar and sort of passionate about 2765. So he just asked if we have any mandatory qualifications or any advice for him when he's looking for somebody to fill the seat.
Absolutely. So I know during our bylaw review, we did include our plan for recruitment at that period. And so I can go ahead and pull up those bylaws. and just show you here kind of what we have for an idea of recruitment. So we are going to be entering our recruitment period soon. There, and as well as Bernays seat, I believe there's 2 or 3 seats that we need filled as well. And so we will start working together to get those seats filled. But if we scroll down here in our bylaws, which actually Jen and Michelle, I have sent you an invite for an e-signature. So whenever you get the chance to go in and do that, that would be great so we can get this posted to our public facing website. But let me see here. I scrolled right past it. Excuse me. There we go. Okay, so here is our membership recruitment period. So we are starting to begin our recruitment period preparations. I'm actually meeting with our communications director right after this meeting to start going over some planning ideas and getting some of these recruitment materials together. Then we'll have our open active recruitment period where people are going to be able to go in and apply for this board via the governor's website. So we will send that link to you, Jen, to have that person fill out whoever they might be in order to submit their application that way. In talking with the commissioner and the goals of BHA, we are really trying to diversify our councils right now. So any DEI inclusion that we can bring forward would be highly, highly recommended. I know that is a big goal of the commissioners right now, as well as ours. So we really want to honor that. So any sort of DEI aspect that they could bring forward in their recommendation would be perfect. Where Jessica, you had your hand up.
I was just gonna ask which seat Dr. Marquardt was sitting in, which seats we have open, because I know some of them are like statutorily mandated, and so I'm just curious which ones are available.
I think almost all of ours are statutorily mandated, so let me pull that list up really fast. And hi, Casey and hi, Scott. Good to see you here. Glad you're able to join us.
Hi guys, sorry about that. My computer decided to update just as I was joining. It was amazing timing, so sorry.
Hey, that happens all the time for me. Do not worry about it. Like just sheer panic for a couple moments. Like
100%.
right.
Like shaking it. I'm like, can I make it stop? But no, it didn't work. So here I am. So.
All right, let me see here.
Yeah, and I apologize for being late, and I'll just share with the group. I'm also helping cover service right now, so if I might get pulled away. It's not my usual day on service, but participate as I can.
Absolutely, no worries, Scott. Thanks for letting us know. And hey, James, we're so happy to have you. Long time no see. Oh,
yeah,
you're
guys, I'm
fantastic
so
today.
sorry I'm late. I had it on my calendar and everything, and then I got in another meeting, and I looked at my clock and like, it's already past 10. Oh my goodness. I'm so sorry I'm late.
It's not a problem. We are happy to have you as always. All right, so just to catch everybody up, I think we have been able to establish a quorum now, so that is wonderful. So if we want to go back to the agenda and approve the November meeting minutes, we can at this time. But we were talking about Renee Marquis. She is no longer with CDHS, so we're talking about new membership recruitment based off of our bylaws that we worked through. This is our current list of board members. So we have a couple of seats that are open statutorily that we need to get filled. And so as we go through our recruitment process, these are going to be, the targeted audiences that we're looking for. And within that, we are trying to, really diversify our councils. And so we are looking to incorporate those DEI elements in our application and recruitment process as well. So here we have families of persons with mental health disorder open. We have the consumer of mental health services, because Rana has not been participating since before I joined. So we are just assuming that that seat is going to be open now. Since Renee is no longer with us, we need somebody from CDHS. We also need somebody from the Department of Public Health and Environment, as well as Children's Healthcare Facilities. So those are going to be those primary seats that we're looking to fill during our recruitment process. Like I was telling the rest of the council, I'm starting to meet with our communications director and our communications team to help develop some recruitment material that we can share within our communities, as well as, do maybe like social media campaigns, plug into newsletters and things like that. so we can really kind of get this information out there to get as many applicants as we can so we can select from some of the greater portfolios. So that's going to be kind of our game plan for recruitment moving forward. But if you see anybody within these lists that you're like, I know this person would be fantastic for this board, I really want to recommend them, please definitely let us know so we can take that into consideration as we start looking through applications and making recommendations to the commissioner for formal review and appointment. Well, actually, for this one, it's the governor for formal review and appointment. Does that kind of make sense to everybody? Is that agreeable? Okay, perfect. I'm going to jump back over to the agenda. So since we do have a quorum reached now, would everybody be comfortable with approving the meeting minutes if we want to take a motion for that?
I make a motion that we approve November's minutes.
Thank you, James.
I'll second.
Who was seconding? Sorry.
Jen.
Jen. Thanks, Jen. All right, perfect.
Yay.
Well, we are cooking. All right. Well, with that, I would love to introduce, we have Kevin Bishop here and Aaron Kreitz, and they are from our DJS, Crisis Systems Subcommittee. And Michelle and I have had the opportunity to meet with them at their subcommittee meeting. I believe it was last Wednesday now, to learn a little bit more about what their subcommittee does and the work that they're doing. And we were able to identify some wonderful cross-collaboration efforts. So we invited them here today to speak with you all, to kind of learn a little bit more as a group of what they're doing and show some of those cross-collaboration efforts that we can utilize with both of our committees moving forward. So with this, I'll just pass it over to Kevin and Aaron, whoever wants to go first.
I'm gonna go first and go least. My name is Kevin Bishop. I'm a licensed clinical social worker. I'm one of the co-chairs of the Crisis Systems Subcommittee. I'm recovering right now from pneumonia, and so if I start coughing, I'm gonna stop talking and turn it over to Aaron. But we are a subcommittee of a larger task force, and I'm gonna let Erin introduce herself and then talk about her role too.
Thanks, Kevin. So I'm Erin Kreitz. My day job is as a policy advisor in the Office of Research and Statistics at the Division of Criminal Justice inside of the Department of Public Safety. Lots of nesting there. And I also serve, in addition to working with Kevin on the subcommittee around crisis work, I serve as the vice chair of the task force. So for those who aren't familiar, the task force we're referring to is the treatment of persons with behavioral health disorders in the criminal and juvenile justice system. We joke that they got paid by the word when they created that task force name. So like most task forces, we're overseen by a legislative oversight committee that kind of officially drives our work, although the task force really is given a lot of latitude to identify those things that are really critical happening in our state around behavioral health and criminal justice and providing recommendations to the oversight committee on the direction the task force wants to go, as well as then providing bill recommendations that go before the legislature each year. So our task force gets 5 bills that go through each year. So this is a great opportunity for us to collaborate, particularly if there are legislative changes that you all would like to see to help facilitate this work. Our task force is really well situated to help facilitate some of that. So that's kind of the big picture overview of our task force. The subcommittee that Kevin and I work on focuses on the crisis system from the very beginning all the way through to folks that are already involved in the justice system. So both from a how can we keep people out of the justice system when they're experiencing a crisis, as well as what does it look like for folks who are in the justice system and experiencing a behavioral health crisis. So kind of that whole continuum is where we focus.
Yeah, thank you. And I'll just in by way of introduction again, and I apologize. My day job is at the Office of the Alternate Defense Counsel. We are conflict counsel for the Public Defender's Office. So when the Public Defender's Office has a conflict of interest in taking a case, our agency steps in, and so I sit in the seat on this task force that is designated for our agency. And as Aaron was talking about, you know, our subcommittee really focuses on people who are in crisis and who are experiencing a behavioral health crisis. And we try to find statewide solutions for folks to help keep them from entering into the justice system. And as you know, a statewide solution for this is really difficult. It's a very highly localized problem that we are trying to work on. And so our subcommittee has a large group of people who attend from a bunch of different stakeholders. And we get together and talk every other week about how can we create sort of bill draft ideas that would be useful on a statewide level, given that the problem that we see is so highly localized. So we've come up with a number of things. We met back in July, August to talk about some ideas to sort of prep for this next year's work. And we came up with some ideas that we are going to sit down and spend some time talking about. And I'd encourage anybody who is in this group who wants to come and attend our meeting, please do. And I've been invited to join these meetings too. And I'm going to as often as I'm able to, because I see in the minutes that there are a lot of areas that we are already talking about doing the same stuff. So I'm excited to get a chance to work together. Our list of ideas is on a Google Drive that Caitlin has access to. But I'm going to start out by talking about this one about law enforcement support for when they show up to do pickup orders. And it looks like that's one that you guys are heavily kind of talking about and invested in. One of the things that we have heard that you have probably heard as well is that law enforcement are reluctant to do pickup orders when they show up if there is no crime being committed. We have law enforcement on our subcommittee who is saying also that that is the case. That the way that they read it is that, you know, with their liability with qualified immunity having been removed, that it feels difficult for them to go forward and put hands on folks if there is no crime being committed. And so one of the suggestions that somebody in our group brought up was, would there be a chance for there to be some limited immunity around that? We haven't really talked about this topic a lot, and so I'm really curious to hear from this group too, some of the solutions that you guys have thought about kind of working on, and how to make law enforcement feel secure and able to honor those pickup orders when there's an M1 hold that needs to happen. And we haven't had really any conversation about it, but we understand that the topic is one that has a lot of tension around it and a lot of different beliefs and feelings about what should happen. And so that's one area where I'm really excited to participate in this group too, to hear about new ideas and if there are ways that we can collaborate to understand that issue a little bit better and to figure out different ways to work on that. I would really like to. I'm going to turn it over to Aaron for some of the other ones at the moment.
And I'll just say, on that one, I think the pickup orders, to Kevin's point, are a big concern for folks, and we're talking about that across a number of different spaces. So I think that will likely consume a good chunk of our efforts, would be my my assumption, particularly because it overlaps with so many state and local entities, and relates to quite a few different populations that overlap in our behavioral health and justice systems. And the issue of competency evaluations and restoration services pops up there as well. So I think we have a number of different spaces where that one can be beneficial to solve that problem. But some of the other kind of places that we're talking about, and I'm just looking at kind of at our list here, are some of the kind of alternative responses and alternative response models. Kevin, I skipped the first one, I'll go back to it. But this is kind of the idea here is how far upstream can we intervene to keep people out of our justice system? So in the ideal world, law enforcement would not be the folks intervening in a crisis because we wouldn't need to wait until law enforcement were called to have an intervention. And so a lot of the conversations that we have are around how do we get non-law enforcement response. That would include even not even getting to a co-responder model if we could, having those responses further upstream with 988, with diversion at the point of 911 to a non-law enforcement response, and what other kind of opportunities are there to invest in those larger alternative response models. Let's see, one of the other things that we regularly discuss is the issue of workforce development and enhancement. Often our group hears that, particularly as it relates to diversion programs, we would love to not have to take people to emergency departments or to jail, but we have nowhere else to take folks. And so and it's not always because the physical buildings don't exist, but it's often because staffing isn't available to staff places 24/7 to receive a person in crisis, and medically clear them or have them medically clear the field, and kind of work through a crisis intervention without going through an emergency department or a jail. So a lot of conversations there end up around, how do we get folks to want to do this work and incentivize folks to do this work, as well as what are the regulatory issues that create challenges for workforce, including licensing, including insurance, and some of those things for both facilities and providers to be able to operate in a broader crisis continuum within a single facility. We talked about law enforcement. I think the other thing that we talk about regularly and is an interesting concept is educating folks around the high cost of the criminal justice system. I think people kind of understand that, but not to the point where they fully recognize that the further upstream we intervene, the significant amount of savings and cost avoidance we can see from state and local funding related to our correctional systems, which are very expensive. And so that's another piece as part of kind of a larger picture is talking about how do we educate policymakers around the cost savings that can occur by intervening. Not stepping back from the fact that it's the right thing to do. I think we all can agree that it's the right thing to do for folks, but to also be able to make that fiscal argument that it is also a fiscally responsible choice in addition to the right thing to do for members of our community in crisis. I talk fast. I also don't sit still, so welcome. Kevin's used to it, but I realize most of y'all might not be. Okay, and then I think another thing on our list is kind of this broader idea of, and it relates to alternative response, it relates to staffing, but having some kind of single points of care for folks. So stabilization units or other types of actual facilities where people can go when they are in crisis that allows them to receive services regardless of whether it's a traditional mental health, a need for detox, a combination of both. And that can also address some chronic medical needs that we've been hearing from a lot of our stakeholders on our task force and working groups. It's not just the combination of substance use and mental health, there's also chronic medical conditions that are involved, which can create challenges for folks to receiving care at specific behavioral health facilities who don't have the capacity to handle certain chronic medical conditions. And so that's another place that we've been talking about looking towards the Summit Stones facility as a model potentially for other statewide services. But again, you know, lots of challenges there with funding and staffing those facilities and access to them for folks in our rural and frontier communities. Some of those solutions are great in our metro and suburban areas, but a little bit more challenging. And I'm sure James can talk about that in detail. But also trying to think of what do some of these statewide solutions mean for our outlying communities that don't have the same access to resources that our metro and suburban areas. That was a lot. I'll take a breath, let Kevin correct everything wrong that I said.
I don't have any corrections. I do have some additions, but one of the things that we've talked about last year and want to continue to carry over into this year is the potential to unify, and I saw this on the list too, but unify in some way the M1 and SED hold process in a way that it is more kind of consistent and that some of the same outcomes happen for folks right now. It's still possible for people to be taken to the jail and be held there on a SED hold. There was one year where we tried to kind of get rid of that and we didn't. And it's still on the list of things that we're interested in. And pairing with that, the idea of digitizing the process of M1 holds. And I know that there's some work that's going to be done this year that's kind of working in that direction with the bill that we have going forward this year. And I don't know how it's going to end up, obviously, but we still intend to continue to move on in that direction to make the process a little bit more formalized and to be able to collect some better data about the numbers of people who are being placed on M1 holds and then also the outcomes for those folks as well through doing more of a digitization of it basically and having a more cohesive kind of manner in doing it. I think that's probably the most of what we're working on. We've got the list. Caitlin's got the list to look at too, and I think that's pretty much it.
Thank you so much. Yes, I will share that list with members. I need to go through my Google Drive because I get so many links every day. But yes, I'll go ahead and go through my Google Drive, pull that up, and then I will share that with members at our recap email following this meeting so you all can review. And then maybe next meeting, we can kind of sit down and go through each of our list and their list kind of side by side and see where some of that additional overlap can be. I'm trying to highlight as we talk, you know, seeing someone's just right off the bat that we can just kind of go ahead and start working through together. But thank you all so much again for being here today. I'm so excited to be working with you and, you know, just really trying to do those cross-agency collaborations here and make movement forward. So Erin and Kevin are going to be wonderful for us in helping us create legislative changes based on our recommendations. So this is just going to be a great relationship moving forward. So I'm very excited to have you here.
Thanks for having us.
Of course, of course. So I know let me see here. Let me jump back over to our agenda. So you guys picked a perfect day to join because we will be having Judge Elizabeth Leaf, who is actually the one that oversees the transportation orders, joining us in a little while today. So I'm gonna just message her in a moment just to make sure that she can still join us. But at this time, it looks like we will pass it over to Jessica Bell. Or actually, I'll pass it over to Jen to pass it over to Jessica. I see you're back on, Jen.
All right. Jess, do you want to talk about your updates?
Certainly. Um, it's gonna take me a whole like maybe minute.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, there's not a whole lot of updates. Last time we talked, we had issued kind of an application for people that wanted to join the task group around eating disorder rules. That's up and running. We've had 2 meetings so far. We've got some really great engagement. We've got people from providers. We've got some people with lived experience. We've got combination lived experience and people who provide services now, which is fantastic. And so we're just kind of moving right along. This chapter will be chapter 15 if you're keeping track of all the different chapters that are available. I'm trying to think what else. No update on posting for the eating disorder licensing specialist yet. It's in the queue to be completed. I've been waiting for weeks. I don't know where it's at. I'll have to double check that one. That's kind of the big stuff. I mean, for those that are not familiar with the process, we're going to be working on building these rules. This first half of the year, we'll do some stakeholdering with the new rules and the draft over the summer to take it to state board later this year in the fall to hopefully get that published and up and running by January 1st of 26. And I'm hoping to get ladders to be to reflect this new option for designation by July 1. So we're moving right along.
Okay, thank you. That was quick.
Well, while we wait for Judge Leaf to join, should we pass it over to Ryan?
Perfect.
Good morning, Mental Health Advisory Board. Ryan Templeton. I'm the Legislative and Governmental Affairs Division Director with the Behavioral Health Administration. And seeing the interpreter, I will slow down a little bit as we always get dinged for that. Legislative update, as many folks may know, our legislative session for 2025 began on January 8th. A little reminder, it's 120 straight days, which includes the weekend of getting stuff done over there. There's been a lot of stuff moving since November when the governor's budget comes out. So right now it feels like maybe a little bit of a lull because they're working through all of the budget stuff. As a reminder, we're about $1 billion budget deficit. So trying to figure out how to cut a bunch of programs. So the Joint Budget Committee is working through a lot of things, considering and making decisions on budget requests and supplementals, eventually get to the figure setting spot. And then from there, some comebacks, which all leads to a big budget package, which includes the long bill. The long bill is projected to be introduced in the Senate first this year on March 24th, and then everything happens, right? So once we know what that looks like, yeah, that's when all of the excitement happens for the last couple weeks of session there. James, I see your hand up already.
I'll wait till you're done. I just wanted to put my placemaker in there.
Awesome. I have some links that I shared with Caitlin that I'll put in there if you're interested in whether it's the 2025 bill requests and general session deadlines, as well as where to find budget related stuff through the Office of State Planning and Budget website. What I really came for is there's already been some introduced bills related to 2765 specifically. Aaron and Kevin addressed one of those, the crisis response recommendations. That's Senate Bill 25042. That's coming from that Behavioral Health Disorders in the Criminal and Juvenile Justice System Committee. Is one of those five bills that Aaron had identified. I'll put a link in that. That's the Behavioral Health Crisis Response recommendations. And how it relates to 2765 is really three parts of that bill. The one part being that it adds language to 2765-106. That's the mental health hold process there, that it adds language for discharging individuals from holds and setting up specific requirements about why individuals were to be discharged from holds, as well as adds a whole new data reporting piece to 2761-131, which is the data reporting section about ensuring that individuals or facilities that report data to the BHA include requirements of why the individual was being discharged from a holder or certification. And then the last piece of that, which relates to 2765, that it requires by December 31st of 2025, all 2765 facilities, in addition to behavioral health entities and hospitals, to report to BHA on their medical and behavioral health capabilities. So we have that list going there. It has been introduced and assigned to the Senate Health and Human Services Committee. It's not been scheduled yet. So we'll kind of keep this on the list if you want to bring me back and have a conversation about where's this bill at when we when y'all meet again in February. We can definitely keep that going. Any questions about that bill specifically before we move on to a couple other ones?
So, Ryan, I think it's scheduled for February 5th, tentatively.
Oh, must have came on when I was looking this morning.
Yeah, that's what we're hearing. Maybe it's not official yet, but that's what we're hearing is February 5th.
Awesome. Thanks. Any other? Oh, Dr. Rice.
Hey, Ryan. You guys can all call me Karen too. I appreciate it. You're all so formal. Okay. Yeah, I was just curious. You said so have to report medical and behavioral health capabilities. Like what? Can you give me an idea of what that means? That's pretty broad. And I can go read the bill too, but yeah.
Here, let me actually put the bill in the chat here, which if we want to even go through this, so it is section 6 of the bill that I just put in the chat there. So page 7. So it's that 275306 reporting requirement.
Okay.
So it's that language related to including but not limited to whether the behavioral health entity, facility, or hospital is able to provide care and treatment for mental health holds, substance use disorders, long-term hospitalization, detox services, intensive outpatient programs, and medical care. So pretty open there. It's not an annual report; it's a one-time, as currently written there as well.
Okay, that's a big distinction too. Thank you.
Yep. Some other ones that have 2765 impact is Senate Bill 9 or Senate Bill 25009, which is the recognition of tribal court orders. I'll put that bill in here as well. It essentially requires various state agencies to recognize and enforce tribal court orders, arrest warrants, and behavioral health commitment orders, which adds a full new part to 2765 as 2765-132, which really establishes that there is that recognition of tribal court orders. That one I also, when I looked this morning, has not been scheduled, but it was assigned to Senate Judiciary. I'll put that one in here as well. This is one that I think this board should keep a close eye on because there is those additions to 2765, which falls directly to this board as advising on what that looks like and implementation of what that looks like. So throw that one in here as well. Questions about that? Right, these are bills that have been introduced. I mean, I think the first big step comes when it goes into committee, and then there's the discussions about, hey, where are different state agencies at? Where are different organizations, trade organizations at related to loving this, not liking this piece of legislation so much, maybe indifferent, and then we kind of see where folks land. But yeah, definitely one to keep a close eye on. Thoughts on that one?
That one is very, very helpful. We've had a couple in the past where it was like, what do we do with this? How does it intersect with 2765? So I hope this gets passed. It's it's time for sure.
Another one that I was going to highlight here that doesn't have specific 2765 impact yet, but one to definitely keep an eye on is Senate Bill 41. It's the Competency in Criminal Justice System Services and Bail. This is also coming out of the Behavioral Health Disorders in the Criminal Juvenile Justice System Interim Committee, which is, like I said, it doesn't currently have 2765 changes, but with competency and 2765 being so closely connected, especially with new procedures like the incompetent to proceed to short-term certification process, it's really, we'll make sure that we're keeping a close track on this and making sure that the board gets any updates related to that based on any amendments, or if there's any proposed amendments coming, we'll make sure that this board is plugged into what that potentially looks like. Kind of one of those other ones where I don't believe it's been scheduled. It's been assigned to Senate Judiciary. I know there is some work across different organizations looking at this and what some updates could look like. So hold tight on what those potential amendments could be that we see in the first committee. Questions about 41, Senate Bill 41? Last one I was going to highlight is House Bill 25-1070, which is the electroconvulsive treatment for minors. What it does is changes the requirements for minors receiving ECT and establishes a process for minors objecting to receiving ECT. This is not in 2765, but there's a connection to 2765 because of the special procedures outlined in 2765 includes ECT. So there's potentially, if this bill were to pass, some updates to forms that BHA is responsible for. This is assigned to House Health and Human Services, and it's scheduled for January 28th, so which is Tuesday. 1:30 in the afternoon is when they meet. I think it's fourth on the agenda was the last time I looked on that. It's in Title 13, which is court and court orders there, but also another one that it doesn't explicitly say stuff about 2765, but obviously there's a little bit of a connection there. So I just want to make sure that that's on your radar as well. Those are the four that we have been tracking with some level of connection to 2765. Is there other ones that folks know about, have seen, or want to talk through any of these? We'll open that up for the group.
I didn't have anything specifically about 2765 bills, but I do have a couple questions for you, Ryan.
Sure, James.
Awesome. Good to see you, brother.
You as well.
So I think you might be the person that may know the answer to this. And one of the questions that's come up is we know that there's a rule that states that anyone 12 years of age or older can receive psychotherapy without parent consent. I thought there were some changes to the rules that said anyone of any age can receive substance use disorder services without parents' consent. And I thought there had been a statutory change or a rule change that did the same for crisis services. I can't find that anywhere. Are you aware of a rule that states that anyone of any age can receive crisis services without approval of the parents?
I don't have it offhand, but I can find it for you. Is that it's not related to 2765 or Title 27, which is behavioral health, or the SUD parts of Title 27. So the psychotherapy at 12 is based off of DORA, or the Department of Regulatory Agencies statute. So that's in Title 12, which I can get that for you as well. The crisis one that you're referring to was some changes that were made, I think, in 2023 related to making sure that crisis service delivery can be provided, which I can get you that, which is based off of 2760 as well. So I'll get all those citations and make sure that Caitlin has those as well, so you can have those for references moving forward.
I knew you'd be the right person to ask. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that, and that will be very helpful for us. And then a follow-up question. And this is open to anybody in the group. One of the other things that we've been pushed back on is when someone calls for someone else and a person refuses to have an evaluation, but you can't. Yeah, and where we're running into problems, honestly, is law enforcement refuses to facilitate an evaluation to determine if the person is a danger to themselves or others. I know there's something in the Colorado crisis rules and the contract that we have to do an evaluation. Is there any statute that gives us the authority to do that evaluation that we can turn to and say, hey, look, we have a statutory responsibility to evaluate that person and determine if they're not a danger to themselves or others, even if they don't want to engage in that evaluation?
Yeah, good question. And this has been a hot one over the last few years related to what this looks like. I'll have to do a little bit of a digging about where things landed. There has been some proposed legislation to the psychotherapy section of the 12-year-old consent to establish what that looks like for consent to not receive service delivery. I'll have to double check what changes actually went through with that part of statute there, and if there's other pieces related to that in the 27 or in the 2760 part of the crisis.
Yeah, and I'm talking even for adults. Let's say you have an adult, someone says, hey, they made suicidal statements, right? You show up, I don't want to be evaluated, I'm not going to talk to you. Where and then you involve law enforcement, and law enforcement's hey, look, they're not an immediate danger to themselves or others, we're not getting involved. We have a duty to act, we have a responsibility to evaluate that person. I'm just wondering, is there statutory responsibility, or is there any statutory language that we can turn to that shows, hey, look, we actually have a responsibility to evaluate that person?
And James and Ryan, I don't mean to jump in and interrupt this conversation, but I do want to be respectful of Judge Lee's time.
Sure.
I know she has a hard stop, so I just want to quickly transition to transportation orders and then come back if that's okay with you all.
Please, I'd love to hear what you say.
Okay.
Thanks, Ryan.
Perfect. So sorry to interrupt, but Judge Lee, thank you so much for being here today. We are very excited to have you. As I mentioned in my email, this group is the Mental Health Advisory Board related to Article 27, or excuse me, Article 65. And so we were talking about some transportation orders, and we had some great conversations the last couple of meetings that we had, and just wanted to kind of bring you in on that subject, if you wouldn't mind speaking to that a little bit.
Okay. So, and Ryan will know this off the top of his head, the bill number that took away the sheriff's immunity, right? Which, and kind of what Mr. McLaughlin was just saying, it's all tied in together with that. But the feedback that we're getting really has to do with not so much, well, two things. The sheriffs lost their immunity through that legislation, and there does not seem to be an appetite to remove that from statute at this point. And then, of course, personnel, like the lack of people to physically go out and execute the order, it seems to be the other issue, primarily those two things in combination. And so we were at the consent decree meeting, the last monthly meeting we had, and I've been working on some draft language to create a mental health transport order that would have language in it similar to the language that I use in our orders currently for the sheriffs to transport someone who may not want to go. And basically to bring back the immunity, but just in a different area, right? It would be a different statutory provision. And then they can fight about it on appeal as to which provision controls. But so that's the idea at the moment. And I got a draft ready to go, and it would my vision of this. It would be applicable to short-term certification, long-term certification, evaluation petitions under 2765-106, involuntary medication orders, imposition of a legal disability or an involuntary commitment. So it would be a mental health transport order. And I was kind of envisioning that it would be a standalone section of statute, so it would be brand new. And it talks about requesting an order from the court that has jurisdiction over a respondent. We would also want it to be applicable to any defendants on the criminal side who are maybe in community placement or even in the jail and need to be transported somewhere for treatment. But primarily it would it's directed to civil people who are in the community receiving outpatient treatment, or maybe they need an evaluation. Mom or dad files a petition and asks for an evaluation, and then there's the issue of getting that person over to the psychiatric ER for the evaluation. Or the other situation where this commonly comes up in my court is medications haven't been taken properly, and the doctor has a certification in place, and they want that person to come back into typically the mental health center to receive their medication or maybe get some treatment in that setting. The other comment I would make about it is that we try to design our orders that we have currently to allow the person in the field to ask the respondent, do you want to go to the hospital? Would you rather go to the mental health center? And take them to either place, so that the sheriff's not running around the city trying to take somebody here and there. So we kind of try to build into the order to give that person a choice. And if they're like, yeah, I'll go to the mental health center, I don't want to go back down to the hospital, it's like, great, we'll take them over there. So, we're trying to work with the sheriff's department, or in Denver at least, on that. It's a very different relationship in other counties, I know that. And of course, the sheriff's departments or offices size varies depending on where you are in the state. There's all of that sort of thing that goes on. But I'm hopeful, based on the discussions we've been having in these other committee meetings, that this might be something that people can sink their teeth on and maybe try to address this issue. So that's kind of what I'm working with. I have a draft, and I said I would give it to Jagruti Shah, who's the deputy for the Office of Civil and Forensic Mental Health, to have her first look at it. And of course, we're early in the legislative session, and I don't have any idea if she's going to look for a sponsor or try to get it through this session.
Thank you, Judge.
Where we're at right now, which is not great, but we're working on it.
Judge, I don't know if you have a moment for a question, but it looks like Scott Simpson in the chat asked, have there been cases brought against sheriffs related to these orders, or are they concerned about potential action? And why do sheriffs feel risk is higher in these instances when administering other orders, i.e. warrants?
So I'm sorry, Ron, can you help me out here? Do you have the number of that legislation off the top of your head?
Yeah, so that I put it in the chat here. It's Senate Bill 2217 was that law enforcement integrity bill from that kind of started this process.
Right. So that legislation, as I understand it, basically took away the sheriff's immunity from, or liability from, prosecution in the execution of transporting. It wasn't, as far as I understood it, not specifically directed to this area, and I don't know of any lawsuits.
Thanks. I was just curious about the context.
Any other questions for the judge while we have her here?
No, I'd just like to thank her for being here and for giving those clarifying remarks. That was very helpful. Thank you. And thank you for all the work you're doing on your end to to help improve processes.
Oh, you're welcome. Yeah, it's on everybody's mind. I mean, I think we all want the same thing, right? We all want this system to work for people and keep them out of jail and keep them in treatment and all the good things. So, we'll just keep plugging away at it.
Judge, if I might add just one other thought, if it's at all possible.
Sure.
I'm sure you already do this, but when you guys are crafting these tools, we always try to avoid law enforcement transport whenever possible, and the BHSD, the Behavioral Health Secure Transport option, is always absolutely fantastic when it's available. And so I would ask just to always, when you craft those, create that opportunity for BHST transport in lieu of law enforcement.
Thank you for that, because I did. So there is a little bit of transport language in current statute related to the evaluation process. So I lifted it out. And my proposed language says the sheriff or law enforcement agency may request assistance from mobile crisis personnel, paramedics, emergency medical technicians, or a secure transportation provider to carry out the order. I mean, is that what you were thinking?
I could not have written that better myself. That was perfect. Thank you.
Okay.
You made James' day.
So, I mean, we're trying. I'm trying to get it all in there. And of course, we'll see what happens with it. But yeah, I try to be mindful of those situations in the draft that I've got.
Judge, do you have time for just 2 more questions, it looks like?
Yeah, I'm fine. Go ahead.
Okay. Looks like Frank, we have you on screen first.
Thank you, Judge. Frank Cornelia with Colorado Behavioral Healthcare Council. We met a couple of times with Edie Sun and really appreciate your work on all of this. I think I had a comment related to Scott's question. I think one of the responses we hear from law enforcement, in addition to what Judge Leith talked about, is that there's one of the responses is there's a lack of specificity in the use of force part of the statute, and that was sort of a question I have for you, Judge, is as you're writing this order, are you also looking at use of force statute to offer some clarification and maybe some assurance for law enforcement in circumstances where that's required?
I'll read you what I've got. It's a little wordy. So I put that the order may authorize the sheriff, law enforcement agency, mobile crisis personnel, paramedics, emergency medical technicians, or secure transportation provider to use such restraints as are reasonably necessary to protect and safeguard the respondent from harm, to access and gain entrance to the premises where the respondent is located, to detain the respondent, transport the respondent, and deliver the respondent to the designated facility, psychiatric emergency room, or county mental health center in the execution of the order.
So it's sort of built into the order, right? That makes sense.
Right. So we would build it right in. And that is mirroring the language that I have in my current order that this court issues.
Thank you.
And then I also put that the sheriff, list of names, shall not be held liable in the execution of the terms of the mental health transport order, which is, that's the title I've given it at this point, mental health transport order.
Thank you, Judge. And it looks like we have Kevin.
Yeah, Judge, thank you so much for your work. And you and I think have met in another group around competency before. And I think you just answered what my question was, but I just wanted clarification that the language that you have put together is in the form of draft language for a bill, and that has gone to Jagruti Shah, and that there may or may not be something coming out of it this legislative session, but it's not just that you've drafted the order and that she's looking at that, trying to figure. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, we met I'm on the consent decree steering committee, And we talked about it at our last meeting. So this draft is kind of the result of that discussion, and of course, the ongoing discussions that we've been having for what, a couple of years now. So yeah, so I have this ready to go over to Dragudi. I was going to send it to her today.
Great. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Any chance you could share that with this group, or is that way too premature?
Let me ask Dragudi what she wants to do with it. I mean, you know, other eyes are great, and because this is a first draft for sure. So I don't know that it's proprietary, and input is probably needed. That was just my first step that we agreed on, is I was going to give it to Dragudi.
Sure. That's how excited we are about it.
Oh,
This is
good.
a
All
wonderful
right.
group of people to have eyes on as well.
So let me do this. I'll ask Dragudi, and if she's okay with it, I can forward it to Caitlin, who can pass it on.
I would be happy to. Thank you so much, Judge.
You're welcome.
Anybody else? Why we still have the judge here for a moment. All right. Well, Judge Lee, thank you again very much for being here today. We really appreciate you taking time out of your day to come speak with us. I know this group is very excited to have you here, as am I, and any work that we can do with you, we're really looking forward to it.
Oh, thank you. All right. You
Thank
guys have a
you.
great rest of your meeting.
Thank you, Judge. Have a good rest of your afternoon. Wonderful. It's so good having her on and being able to answer some of these questions. Did we want to go back to your question, James? Sorry to have interrupted that. I just wanted to be respectful of her
No,
time. I knew she had some hard deadlines today, so.
no, I really appreciate you getting her here, and that was all really helpful. And I will absolutely defer anytime, and I'm willing to defer the rest of this questioning. I have a couple more questions, but I can defer to the group if there's other important matters that we need to address first.
So looking at the agenda, really, we're just going to kind of talk a little bit about our running list of ideas. It looks like there had been a new one added, and then just kind of wanted to let you all know that the public questionnaire is live, so that shouldn't take more than just a minute or two. So if anybody else is opposed, I think that we do have a little bit of extra time, if that's okay.
Yep. Awesome. All right. Well, thank you. Ryan, so that if you if you want to get back to me with an answer on that one as well, I think that's an area we're struggling. And an example would be, you know, my provider shows up, they've been requested by crisis or by someone to evaluate this person that made statements. That person's refusing to allow us to assess them, and we don't really have any proof that that person is or isn't a danger to themselves or others. It's kind of a weird situation to be put in. And historically, what we've done is we've had law enforcement support to kind of guide that work. But if law enforcement saying, hey, look, you know, if we do nothing, we're protected by qualified immunity. But if we do something under this bill and we're deemed to have violated this person's civil rights, then we're no longer protected. So we're going to back out, and we don't really have a duty to act, but you guys do. So I was just wondering if there's any legislation that we can hang our hats on with that.
I would have to do so double checking, especially with our 2765 team that is at statutorily responsible for providing a bunch of trainings on a whole bunch of different things related to this. So I can do some digging on that with our 2765 team related to what that looks like. And I fully assume this questions came up over the years. So don't want to necessarily go down a path without talking with those folks, because they already may have established trainings for that, which may be an easier response for you as well.
And sorry,
Perfect.
James,
Thank
can I
you.
clarify? I'm just trying to, so the concern is that law enforcement is presenting and the patient is not proactively saying, they're not sharing information for an M1 hold, but there's other sources of information that cause concern. Is that
Correct.
the
Yeah.
crux?
So the concern was brought in
Okay.
by someone else that this person's suicidal, homicidal, gravely disabled.
Uh-huh.
They're refusing to engage. Law enforcement's
Yeah.
refusing to engage with the client. But we have a duty to act because there is the
Yeah.
potential for dangerous substance, and you can't rule it out.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I would pose it to the group. Like, I don't see why the current M1 wouldn't be applicable. I mean, the M1 doesn't obligate you. I mean, M1 just means you're getting someone to an evaluation. Like, if you have sufficient concern, it seems like that is something you could write on the M1. I mean, I'm thinking of like in the emergency setting, patients I see who are very disorganized, or, we have safety concerns like this all the time. And, the M1 is placed not necessarily thinking, I know this person is going to end up on a cert or whatever. I just need enough time to do an evaluation. And so I mean, I don't know all the concerns, but I'd say that in a clinical setting, maybe Dr. Rice has other thoughts, but in a clinical setting, I'd say that's not uncommon.
And I would agree that is historically been best practice, right? Or that has historically been practice. What we're running into now is, well, show me in statute or show me in rules where you can do that.
And sorry, one more thought. I mean, I guess what I would say is, like, the statute doesn't say the patient says they're going to hurt themselves. It says suicide risk. And
Right.
and so those are sometimes the same and sometimes not.
Yeah. No, and maybe the answer is that's it. I'm just wondering if there's not something even more substantial.
Yeah, sure.
And if there's not, there's not, right? Like it just is what it is, and we do what we do. But boy, if there's something else out there, something in rule that says, oh yeah, absolutely, you have to, because certainly within the Colorado crisis system, there's rules that say you have to do that, but that's not statute. That's not regulation, right? That's contract. So
yeah, and people feel it's a barrier to getting folks to care, obviously. So that's its own. So is it an informational something from BH? Yeah.
So
Oh,
go ahead, sir.
yeah, and I think that's what I was talking about, is like what sort of BHA information can we provide to establish that clarity about what statute doesn't explicitly say, but as whether it's best practice or regulatory that's maybe missing just that very, very concrete, like, hey, this is what we do in Colorado, is also that spot where, okay, what at times we need that. And that's part of what regulatory provisions are for, as well as what, right, procedure manuals, for instance, right? Like, how are we doing this as a state in a uniform fashion? Is, I think, James, maybe what you're looking for there too, is like, hey, state, help us out at times. But yeah, so we may have some stuff related to that, and it's also a good flag for us is that if we don't, let's potentially think about what that would look like.
I appreciate that. Thank you. That would be extremely helpful for me on my end. So and then I just have two really quick things. The first one is on February 18th. Ryan, I know this is a really busy time of year for you, and this is open to anybody in the group, but February 18th, the MSAC, Emergency Medical Services Council, is hosting our EMS at the Capitol. So we have EMS providers from all over the state there that entire day. And we are doing a lunch and learn at 11 a.m. at the Pig Puff building, 303 17th Street, the 11th floor, from 11:30 to 4. Come have lunch on us and learn about treatment in place, and the importance of getting treatment in place paid for. That would include when EMS agencies come out and do evaluations on patients in behavioral and substance use disorder crisis, and getting them either treated in place or transported to alternative destinations. So we're not sending all of these folks to the emergency room. So just want to throw that out there. And then the last question I have is, Signal Health is our Bahaso. And I'm just a little bit, and maybe I get a little bit nervous sometimes. I like to be proactive. We have not heard from them yet. And as the mobile crisis provider for Teller and Park County, I'm starting to get a little bit nervous. And I'm just wondering if I know the contracts got signed a little bit late, but I was expecting to hear from them just after the first year, and that just hasn't happened yet. And so I'm wondering, should I start getting nervous, or is everything okay?
Very good question. Everything is okay. We're currently going through contract negotiations with them.
Okay.
Yep.
Awesome.
So from there, that will be the next step after those. What does establishing the networks look like from there?
Cool. Well, then I won't panic.
And James, if you can send me that info about that lunch and learn, I will send it back out to the group to remind them. And I can also tap into some of my other councils and let them know about the upcoming event as well.
That's awesome. Thank you very much. We really appreciate that.
Of course.
That's all I have. Thank you so much for making some time, everybody. I appreciate that.
Hey, we are right on time, so you're keeping us on track. There we go. All right, Jen, do you want to move us over to our next section?
Yeah, so does anybody on the meeting today have any other recommendations? It looks like we are going to discuss adding immunity to statute that reflects ICEC statute language. I assume that's in regard to transportation, which we kind of discussed already, so.
Yes. So unfortunately, my puppy cut his foot like 20 minutes before our agenda meeting this week. So I was not involved in those earlier conversations. So I know Joy was helping me run this. Joy, can you clarify if that is what that is with regard to?
Yeah, on Tuesday, when we were meeting, it was just this realization that somehow EC, emergency commitments with SUD, they're not running into the same issues with law enforcement engagement in getting transports when there's an emergency commitment order for substance use disorder treatment. And so, again, going back to that discussion about what language is in, or with the qualified immunity where law enforcement is concerned about engaging, it just may be a resource to look at in terms of being able to bring or utilize that language or be familiar with it. From my experience, I know probably in the general public, and when we're looking at that, a lot of people, individuals, aren't aware of the SUD emergency commitment and involuntary commitment around substance use disorder. But I just wanted to include that because that was recognized during that planning meeting that it's like, yeah, EC doesn't have this issue, it doesn't seem like. Did I get that right, Jen?
I think so.
And Jessica, when we were talking?
Any other comments around that? Seems like EC keeps coming up when we're discussing 2765. I've been on the board probably, gosh, I don't know, 8 years. And it feels like every other year we start talking about EC and the reflections on 2765, but that it's just not possible to combine the two. But there is a lot of similarities.
Well, I was going to say, one of the things that BHA is working on just in general, with the addition of the ASAM 4th edition, we're looking at ways to combine like walk-in crisis CSU with withdrawal management protocols, because withdrawal management level 3.2 is going away. So there's a lot of exploration around this. I actually was at Summit Stone on Wednesday, and Dr. Brooks, Cassie, and I just really kind of talked about if we were to combine such a thing to reflect behavioral health crisis and not just mental health crisis. I mean, this section of statute would need a massive overhaul. I don't think it's something that we could do easily, but I don't think it's something that can't be done, if that makes sense. So I think that we're on the horizon of this kind of movement anyway, so it might be worth looking into, and it might not be just saying a combination of ECIC into 2765. It might be more of how do we revise 2765 processes to reflect co-occurring disorders.
Yeah, thanks, Jess and Jen. Appreciate this continuing to be on, on all of our radars and just on the agenda in some capacity, knowing that, we've talked through this for years, Jen, and the hardships of changing statutes and combine them. But I think what recently is something else that's come up, is just the challenge that we have seen in a few cases around individuals who are co-occurring, to Jess's point, that we have been serving within our, our crisis facility, withdrawal management, on an EC, then on an IC, who need involuntary medications, but we're unable to serve them on the IC with involuntary medications unless the IC is dropped and shifted to a mental health hold and then a certification. So just that barrier and the bifurcation of that process for someone who does have a co-occurring disorder, and navigating the different pathways to get someone the care that they need, that's just surfaced in a few cases recently, and I think was some of the impetus behind the conversation that we had recently. But knowing, the language, to, I think, Joy's point, in how do we leverage language across behavioral health services to meet the needs of whatever we need, and if there's things that we can change, then I think it makes sense for us to keep this on our radar.
Well, and in the interim, between taking like this giant overhaul of 2765 to be all encompassing, perhaps in the meantime suggesting that there is a pathway to move individuals from ECIC into 2765, because that currently doesn't exist.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
Just as you said that, I was just thinking about, Ryan had brought up that process of incompetent to proceed to short-term certification. And those are two separate type of evaluations. We know competency is around more of a legal status versus clinical. And so there's not a great translation between competency and then the need for short-term cert, even though that's the intention, recognizing that this individual has significant treatment needs. We want to try and get there. But when you're talking about that pathway between ICEC and then 2765, those are more clinical processes as well involved. There's already some assessments in there and, treatment established with the IC, that it's like there may be a smoother road to that. But I think it's still, not established, as you pointed out, and it's missing for sure.
I agree with you, Joy. That seems like a much and technically easier thing to do than it would be to come from the legal perspective into civil. Both of those things would be both civil, and it seems like it should be, it on its face a little bit easier to do. I don't know if it actually is, but.
All right. Moving right along. Caitlin, did you want to just go over the public questionnaire real quick?
Yes. So as we had mentioned in some of our previous meetings, we want to create a resource for you all to utilize, as well as members of your community to utilize whenever you have a question regarding the work that the council is doing or anything related to 2765. And so when you go to the Mental Health Advisory Board website, under resources, you will see the public questionnaire and feedback form. We are currently translating this to a Spanish version as well. I have translated it, but we're just waiting for our comms team to get it uploaded to the website. So a Spanish version will be available for any Spanish speakers of the communities that might need that. When you click on it, it's going to be really simple and easy. You'll just kind of fill out some information. And then you'll be able to ask any questions, comments, or concerns that you might have related to Article 2765. So moving forward, we'll just review this with our executive subcommittee at each meeting, seeing if we have any questions that we can answer live during meetings, or if there's any resources that we can provide these people that are asking these questions with as we continue to move this forward. So again, it's right under resources on our website here. So it's going to be a great tool if you're out in your community and somebody asks a question that you might not know the specific answer to. Please direct them to this form that they can fill out, and we can either talk about this live, get them resources that they might need, or anything like that. So just wanted to let you know that it is live, up and running. Any questions about that?
Is there also something on the 2765 page that allows for questions specifically to them?
That is a really good question.
And if not, could we do the same thing there? I don't know, Jess, sorry. I don't know if that's something you want to look into.
I mean, we usually get questions just directly through the BHA like general email. And more often than not, we don't get those questions, if that makes sense. Like they somehow get to me directly anyway, and it's usually providers. So I'm not usually fielding like public questions.
Oh, okay.
Jessica, do you think that we could potentially link this forum there as well? So we can just kind of look at it from two different lenses?
For sure.
Great. Perfect.
I think I don't know I didn't get a chance to actually look at the form itself. But if there's a way to ask whoever's submitting the question how they would like to be informed, that would be really helpful.
Sounds good.
And then where does this go? Does that go directly to you, Caitlin?
Yes. So what we'll plan to do in our executive subcommittee meetings moving forward is the great thing about these Google feedback forms is when I have the edit capability, we can do all of this into basically an Excel sheet here. So that's how I'll be able to track all of these moving forward. It's going to be great for us to kind of track trends in questions. So if we see, the same question being raised multiple times from multiple different people, we can start kind of like specifically focusing on that question or that area that we need to focus on, and things like that. So that's kind of what we'll start doing in our executive subcommittee meetings moving forward, is just kind of taking a peek at this and tracking the trends and questions, who's asking them, if we're seeing the same questions in rural areas versus, Denver metro areas, and things like that. So I'll definitely work with Jessica to get this uploaded to that 2765 page as well. So we can start looking at it. So we have multiple locations where we can get this resource out to people. Any other questions about this? All right. So I know that we do want to, as always, hold a moment for public comments. So if there's any member of the public that would like to come off mute at this time, please just go ahead and raise your hand. I'm happy to unmute you. All right. Well, Jen, I will pass it back over to you to close us out then.
All right. Last quick item is our next in-person meeting. We've discussed maybe every few months doing an in-person meeting or hybrid option, in-person and with the virtual option. So we talked about holding a meeting for March at the BHA office. I assume that's at Sherman Street, correct?
No, the BHA office is in Cherry Creek area. So it is 710 Ash Street.
Okay.
So I will provide all of that information on how to get to us, how to find our exact building location and things like that. And probably around February. I'll also go ahead and just send out a doodle poll or just like a form just to see how many people that we're going to be able to get in person. I know that this is a busy time of year and with weather and being able to, travel and things like that. So I'll just send that out ahead of time to see, an exact head count of how many people we might be able to get in person. But we'd love to see you all in person if you're able to join us in March. James.
Yeah, I know we've talked about going remote and going to other areas. We did one already. I just would really love to have an opportunity to bring everybody up to our area, and we'd love to host. So I want to throw that out there again. I don't know if March is a good time to do that. I know we're talking about maybe doing it there, but I would just throw my hat in the ring and say, hey, if you have any interest, we'd love to host either in March or at some point in the future. Love people to see, what we're doing and get to see everybody in person and that's it.
Definitely. We'll definitely take you up on that for the next meeting. I think we decided the BHA office in March just because of like snow and weather unpredictability. But once we're kind of like out of the range of the threat of snow, so maybe like May-ish possibly. But I know we all really want to come up and see you and see the work that you're doing in your community because you are so involved and you are just leaders in your community. So we would love to come out to you, James.
We never get snow in March.
Or May. Don't forget, some of our big storms have happened in May.
Yeah, that's true, actually. That's very true. All right, everybody.
Any other last comments, questions? All right. If not, have a good weekend, everybody.
Thank you so much. Kevin, Aaron, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having us.
All right. You all have a great rest of your week and weekend and happy Friday, everybody.
Have a great weekend, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.